Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jack Edwards and this is my celebrity book club. If you're new to the channel, this is essentially a series where I read books that famous people have recommended and then psychoanalyze them. Today our next, I don't want to say victim, our next subject is Pedro Pascal, the certified internet daddy. No one plays a father figure quite like this man. Add him to Mount Rushmore as a founding father, no one would complain, I swear. And he's also possibly the most charming man to ever exist. You cannot hate this guy. And just when we thought we couldn't love him more, he has recommended his favorite books. And when I saw that he had recommended both Jane Eyre and The Master and Margarita, I knew that this man had taste. And so I immediately went out and bought the rest of the books on his list that I hadn't yet read, like a perfectly sane person would. So we have 100 Years of Solitude. I feel like the last of us to get around to reading this book. We also have Franny and Zooey. Now normally when people recommend J.D. Salinger books, it's like a bombastic side-eye moment. People say J.D. Salinger is a red flag author, but for Pedro, we're colorblind. I'm excited to read this one because I actually really love The Catcher in the Rye. Then we have Another Country by James Baldwin. Giovanni's Room is one of my favorite books, so I can't wait to read one of his longer works. And then finally, this short story collection by Daphne du Maurier called Don't Look Now. So this week I am going to be working my way through Pedro Pascal's book recommendations and letting you know whether they're more Mandalorian or Mandaborian. Let's go. And the first book that I'm going to tackle is Another Country.
2 hours later.
Little update, I am about 100 pages in and I can't put this down. This writing is spellbinding. I can't get over how good this is.
3 days later.
Listen, I'm going to come right out and say it. This is now one of my favorite books of all time. I am so buzzing to have discovered this piece of art, and truly, it belongs in the Louvre because this is art. This was Another Country by James Baldwin. He is called James Baldwin because he never loses. This man writes so beautifully and eloquently. This is a big claim, but I don't know if any author ever so perfectly captured and understood the human condition in the way that James Baldwin did. He writes so intimately about a range of characters, and each one just explodes off the page and feels so real. It is profoundly emotionally intense, and I ate this up. I genuinely considered cancelling plans just to continue reading this book. That's how good it was. Another Country is in another league. It's in a league of its own, truly. So let me tell you what this is actually about. We follow a group of liberal friends in New York City. They're all connected in one way or another, and we explore the range of experiences that each one of them goes through in this big, scary world and this scary city. And the dynamics between different sets of characters was so intricately and meticulously and articulately explored. There were scenes and moments that took my breath away, gave me goosebumps. I had to like temporarily stop reading it just to take it in. And ultimately the book is all about love and the myriad forms that love takes and manifests itself in, but it's not necessarily a love story. You know, in this book, love bends and breaks and it creates, but it also destroys. The book really challenges your ideas and puts the characters in tricky scenarios where they have to confront the realities of life. The book just clutches your heart and holds onto it for the duration of the 400 pages that it contains. Each character has flaws and makes mistakes, as real people do. And what shines through and what James Baldwin captures so perfectly is the humanity of it all. It's safe to say I am absolutely infatuated with this novel. I wanted to start it again from scratch the second I finished it, but we have more books to read, so I'm gonna move on to those. But thank you. Thank you, Pedro Pascal, for introducing me to this book because wow, I don't think I'll ever be the same again. I don't know if I'll ever recover. The bar has been raised very, very high.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Something that has personally raised the bar for me is Ritual, who have very kindly sponsored today's video. Obviously, reading is a big part of my daily routine, but something that I've been trying to add into that is developing healthy habits and taking these multivitamins. These are essential for men, and these help you to fill in the gaps in your diet with no shady additives, fillers, or colorants. 2 of these easy-to-take capsules contain 10 nutrients, and that includes vitamin A, D, omega-3, and zinc, which are difficult for you to get just from your diet alone. These are delayed release capsules, so they're designed to be easy on an empty stomach. And there's also this little mint tab in here, which basically means that they smell and taste really fresh. And what's really cool is that Ritual are as transparent as this bottle about what ingredients they use and why. You can trace their whole decision-making process, from where they source the nutrients and why, to their environmental impact. The packaging is also made from 100% recycled material, material. Their mailers are created using recycled newsprint and plant fibers. Even the ink is plant-based. And you can get a delivery subscription, so these come straight to your door. And Ritual have very kindly given us 20% off your first month of Ritual if you use the code jackedwards20 at ritual.com/jackedwards20, and you can join me in creating healthy daily rituals. And now let's move on to Don't Look Now. Hopefully this is going to be my exact reaction.
One pair of pants later.
Don't Look Now was recommended by our pal Pedro in an interview with 92Y, and it's by Daphne du Maurier, who wrote Rebecca. In this story, a couple who have recently lost their daughter very tragically go to Venice on holiday to relax, get a little bit of an escape, and pretty much the opposite happens. They're sitting having dinner one night when the husband realizes that this woman across the bar has been staring at him for their entire meal. And he's getting a little bit spooked, he's getting a little bit creeped out, and then he realizes that she's blind, and that is why she is staring at him. Anyway, his wife goes over to talk to these two women, and they kind of ominously warn her that they need to leave Venice immediately or something very, very bad is going to happen. I don't want to say too much because I think that you kind of need to go into this story blind and just experience it for yourself. But what I will say is this was terrible for my anxiety levels, because I was so tense the entire time I was reading this. I genuinely had that feeling throughout of your stomach being in nervous anticipation because you know something is coming. And the ending did have me shook. It's like the perfect short story, I think. You would study this in class. Just in terms of structurally how it's laid out. When I went to writing school, this is the kind of thing my teacher would eat up. I do think the pace slows a little bit in the middle, but right at the end it's pulled super tight again. And I thought it was a fun, quick read, quite creepy, with, a good payoff. And honestly, it was nice to just imagine that I was in Italy a bit, strolling through Venice, except crippled by fear and dread. So, fun. Yeah, I'm glad to have read this. I'm glad to have read something else by Daphne du Maurier, because like I said, I really love Rebecca, and, those fantastical, supernatural elements are also subtly in here, but to a point where it still feels realistic, It's like your worst fears imagined, pretty much. So anyway, that is Don't Look Now. The next book that I'm going to be reading is this one. This is Franny and Zooey, which I realize now is actually a novel divided into two parts. So firstly, you have a short story called Franny and then a novella called Zooey, but it's kind of combined into one. And apparently these characters also feature in some of J.D. Salinger's other works, so I'm very intrigued by this.
2 hours later.
I think this is on its way to being a 5-star read for me. It is so sharp and witty and kind of audacious too. And Franny has so many great one-liners like, I do like him, I'm sick of just liking people, I wish to God I could meet somebody I could respect. Or this one, all I know is I'm losing my mind, Franny said. I'm just sick of ego, 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 my own and everybody else's. I'm sick of everybody that wants to get somewhere, do something distinguished and all, be somebody. It's disgusting. It is. I don't care what anybody says. The overall story is about Franny going on a date with this intellectual guy called Lane. They both got their guard up, it makes their conversation very tense, and I just thought Franny was such a well-crafted character. These two are in different lanes, shall we say. And J.D. Salinger is almost writing them with an air of mockery, but also a fondness, And we're in on the joke as the reader. You're like a fly on the wall watching them, and Franny is just such a fun character. I'm obsessed with her. I love writing like this, and I can't wait to see what the next section contains.
A few moments later.
This is a disaster. I don't think I like the second part. Okay, so a couple days have passed because I found the Zooey section of this book a little laborious to read. It's like with the Franny section, J.D. Salinger is so carefully towing the line where he's depicting a kind of mundane scenario and it is literally just two people talking, but it's still captivating and interesting and endearing, whereas the Zooey section was just a little bit too far for me. It was like the first bit was teetering on the edge and this one took one step too far. And it was honestly just a bit dull. I don't know. Zooey is basically Franny's older brother. And at first you have this funny little scenario where he is in the bath and then his mum comes in and they're having a conversation, and he shaves and he goes downstairs to talk to Franny. And both Franny and Zooey are intensely introspective and hyper self-aware, and that leaves them feeling kind of disillusioned with the world. Franny is essentially having a bit of a breakdown because we find out that the book takes place just after a family tragedy. So there are still great one-liners and it still has that kind of outrageous zest, But for me, the second part of this book just dragged and dragged and dragged. It does have moments where it's genuinely very funny, but you have to have a lot of patience to get those moments. It truly is no plot, just vibes. And ultimately, Franny and Zooey is just a series of arguments between different people. And through the confrontations different characters have with each other, they also confront themselves and also society at large. That's how they sort of vent their frustrations with the world around them and the things that have happened to them. They think about their place in the world, positive and negative human traits. They also unpack religion and education. But at the crux of the novel is the family dynamic. It's about the frustration of conforming to social expectations and whether that really yields satisfying results or not. It could also be mistaken for a book about smoking, because literally like every 3 lines someone lights a cigarette. So I get why this book is held in very high regard. It's something I'm glad to have read, and it brought up a lot of ideas. I just found the second half a bit of a slog to actually read line by line, you know? And I'm sad because I wish I could review these 2 parts separately. The Franny section is honestly one of the best things I've ever read, and I wish that it had kept up with that same tautness and control that J.D. Salinger is executing in the first short story. The Zooey segment is still necessary because it adds a lot of context and follows up on a few things, contradicts a few things from the first story, but you could still easily read that first part as a standalone, and I thought it was immaculate. So I have kind of mixed feelings here, I guess, but very grateful to have read another J.D. Salinger book and so many memorable moments in this book, so yeah, on to the next one.
2,000 years later.
I swear, it took me 100 years of solitude just to finish this book. It has been so long since I started this video. I'm now in Japan. I had to really take my time with this one, but I am so happy to have read it. This was dense. Magical and wonderful, but dense. And so that took me a lot of brain power because I am also quite dense. 100 Years of Solitude is pretty much the definition. This is the textbook example of no plot, just vibes. Honestly, Gabriel Garcia Marquez is insane for this. Insane, but like in a fun way. I kind of appreciate that he was like, hey, love and sex are the most fun things to write about, so let's explore that. And let's just go wild. He will say the most batshit crazy thing, but he says it in such a normal way that you're just like, yes, of course, this makes perfectly logical sense that this woman is 200 years old and hasn't died yet. Or the fact that there are 17 characters with the same name. This family tree in the front, it's there for a reason. I don't know if you can see that right there, but this person's offspring is 17 people with the same name. And I usually kind of like this limitless, boundless creativity when it comes to short stories. Because in a short story, it's kind of contained to the world of like 20 pages. And so you kind of just embrace the madness. In this book, you have to do that for 400 pages. You really have to let your imagination just run wild because Gabrielle did exactly that. And once you embrace it, it is a ride with loop-de-loops. And you just have to put your arms up and enjoy. It's definitely a book I feel like I'll never forget reading for the first time, but the whole time I was reading it, I kept thinking, I cannot wait to reread this and just appreciate all of the little details. So this book really pioneered magical realism as an idea in literature, which is so cool. But there are points where a girl would just like float off into the sky and you'd be like, oh yes, of course. You know, at first you're like, did I just read that right? And then you're like, oh no, yeah, that is totally to be expected here. Anything is allowed in this world. We hear about each character in this ever-growing and absurdly cursed family. They couldn't catch a break if it was thrown to them. And then the narrative sort of flows very freely between them. And the book discusses fate, time, magic, honesty, order and chaos, generations and family dynamics. Like, so much is contained within this volume. So with that concludes my Pedro Pascal reading challenge. I feel like I have aged 100 years since I started this, but these books were so incredible. I found a new favorite book in another country. I'm so grateful for this reading list. And I also recently saw that Pedro has recommended both Crime and Punishment and East of Eden, which are also bangers. The man never misses, honestly. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Massive shout out to Ritual for sponsoring it, and let me know who you'd like to see my next celebrity book club focus on, who my next victim is. Until then, all the best, stay in touch, have the most wonderful day, and I'll catch you very, very soon. Bye-bye, and follow me on Instagram if you want Japan updates, because I'm traveling right now. Okay, bye!